Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Invisibly Irreplaceable, a place where women are seen and stories are told. I'm Betsy Sagebrook, and each week I write and record a new original short story. Please follow and leave a review. It helps push the podcast further out for more women to enjoy. This week, we are reading Not Me Being Anxious. I can't breathe. My chest gets tight and sometimes my heart races. I can't sleep at night. Everything I see on the news is just so traumatic and it feels like the whole country is blowing apart. The way people are being treated is insane. It feels like there are no boundaries to the government anymore. I'm scared all the time. And when I think about it, I can't eat. It's like having this weight pressing down on me every day. And I have no control over anything. I take a deep breath and look over at Emma. She is the picture of composure. Sitting in a comfortable red paisley winged back chair, legs crossed at the knee, wearing green soft chinos and a white ruffled blouse while a sound machine hums quietly in the corner. Emma has been my therapist for 3 weeks now, and I feel like she's my only anchor to reality. I'm grasping for any lifeline she can throw me, and she chooses her words as carefully as she applies her perfectly blended eyeshadow. Each week as I sit across from Emma, I study everything about her. I envy her composure, the waist-long braids, clear mocha skin, flawlessly lined lips, and caramel brown eyes that see right into the center of her patients. There are therapists, and then there are good therapists. Emma can read people as if they were thinking with the closed captions on. She asks the kind of questions that separates joints and marrow, leaving you saying things out loud you've never spoken before, or telling secrets you've never whispered. I needed her help like a drowning man needs a life preserver, but I'm also just a little bit scared of what the depths of her abilities may be. What was she going to find in our time together? I hear what you're saying, Hannah, and it can be incredibly scary listening to the news and watching what's on social media. You're right. Most of it is out of your control. There's not much you can do to keep people from being deported or stop bombs from dropping. So let's look instead at what you can control, instead of focusing your time and effort on things that paralyze you with fear. What if we limit worrying to 1 hour a week, 5 o'clock on Wednesdays, and that is your only time to ruminate and obsess about the world outside? If you miss it, you have to wait till next week. That frees up space in your mind to put any new worry on a shelf and make it wait until Wednesday at 5. In the meantime, you can practice refusing to think about what scares you and choosing to focus on the things you can control. Your family, your friendships, your faith, your hobbies, the life-giving things inside your home's four walls. It's going to take practice, and you'll feel messy and imperfect at first, but it could ultimately be very freeing. How do you feel about that? To only worry once a week? What if something comes up that's an emergency or I have to focus on? I looked at Emma in disbelief at such a preposterous idea. I can't just not know what's going on in the world. That's irresponsible. And when I learn about new things, I have to focus on them to see a way out. But have you been able to see a way out? Emma counters. No, I admit sadly, picking at a blonde hair on the wrist of my least favorite pumpkin-colored cardigan. It always makes me feel lumpy, but it was a gift from my husband, so I wear it each fall. Then what difference is it going to make if you don't focus on something and worry about it? Emma counters. I might be unprepared. I might not know what's coming, whatever's happening, I offer. Would knowing about deportations or bombings ahead of time make you more prepared for them? Would you have been able to implement any of your solutions? No. So since your worrying hasn't been able to change anything, let's take a break from that and practice not worrying by choice. Refusing to let your mind get stuck on your fears, but rather redirecting your thoughts to the things you know to be true and within your control. You can't stop people from getting deported. You can focus on reaching out to your neighbors and building strong relationships. You can't stop bombs from dropping. You can focus on raising resilient children and donating money to charities that help refugees. Do you see what I mean? I nodded and sat silently, marinating on the thought of actively choosing not to worry. It sounded glorious and ridiculous, irresponsible all at once. Like burying my head in the sand or living off grid. Selective ignorance isn't always bliss. But I wouldn't consider being acutely aware of what's happening all over the country blissful either. Our bodies aren't designed to hold this much pain and information about tragedies happening around the globe at all hours of the day. It overloads our central nervous system and we get stuck in these fear loops. By choosing not to focus on the wide array of things we can't control, we are actually protecting ourselves and giving our bodies the freedom to relax and enjoy our day-to-day lives. It's countercultural in a lot of ways. Fear sells, and people count on the public consuming their media and videos to make money, even to the detriment of those consuming that type of content. Making yourself miserable every day by strapping on a heavy backpack full of the world's hurts doesn't help anybody, Emma explained. I knew that. I wasn't one of those people that turned on Fox News or CNN and left it running in the background all day. I didn't seek out what was happening in the world, but the bits and pieces trickled down to my ears and pinned me to the ground like 1,000-pound boulders. I could no longer function the way I used to. What are some of the things you could do when you start to feel worries coming on? Emma asked, tucking her long braids back over her shoulder and smoothing her pants. I knew all the self-help answers. They were unrealistic things, such as running a hot bath and soaking in bubbles, or getting a massage. Things that could not possibly help me in my daily routine and would not stop my brain from ruminating all the way to Aldi's. Is this the part where you tell me to get a journal and get all my fears out on paper? I challenge, starting to get a little antsy. I didn't want concepts and jargon. I wanted boots-on-the-ground answers that took my fears away and kept me from losing my ever-loving mind in the quiet corners of my day. You don't have to journal if you don't want to, Hannah. Not everyone enjoys that. But I want you to tell me 3 things you can do to help you feel grounded when the fear creeps in. I stared at her blankly, wanting to point out that I came to her for these answers, not the other way around. Emma's not stupid. She read my face and knew exactly what I was thinking. What are some things that you enjoy doing that give you peace? Do you have a hobby? Do you pray or meditate or volunteer? All of these can fill up the space that not worrying is going to create. I think for a moment, twisting the wooden toggles on the front of my sweater. The church we attended had endless volunteer opportunities. I knew how to pray, but it wasn't exactly a priority in my day. Actually, I'd been getting squeezed out by anxious thoughts lately. Sometimes I wondered where God was and if he even saw what was happening down here. By the time our session ended, Emma had challenged me to come up with something physical, something spiritual, and something creative to do in place of worrying to help beat back the dark shadows. I rolled that thought around in my head all weekend like a peanut butter dough ball, before smashing it down with a hypothetical fork and coming up with my solutions. It hit me while I was at Nova's varsity volleyball game. I was sitting next to my girlfriend Ursula, who ran a home daycare. She mostly kept kids after school until their parents got home, but she did have one baby during the day whose mother occasionally worked weekends. Pudgy Jaden came with Ursula to watch as her daughter Dominique played alongside my daughter Nova on Saturday morning. Hannah, would you mind holding him a second? I have to go to the ladies' room again, Ursula questioned, mostly as a formality, as if I would say no. Woman, don't threaten me with a good time. Hand that pork chop over here. I reached over for Jaden and grabbed his squishy round body with both hands. Chunky babies were the best kind, and no one had seen Jaden's neck for the past 3 months. At 6-month-old, he was in 18-month clothes and had chubby tan cheeks and wispy dark curls just like Nova at that age. I hugged the baby to my shoulder and squeezed, like a dopamine hit to the brain. This little meatball had me momentarily forgetting my worries as I grinned back at his slobbery, toothless smile. That laugh was intoxicating. It reminded me how much I missed holding babies. Before I had Nova, I was a baby and family photographer. I loved those little burrito-swaddled newborns with knit hats, or frilly dressed toddlers with patent leather shoes. I took Christmas card photos and graduations, baptisms, and bat mitzvahs. In those days, I was dreaming of starting my own family and gazed upon those shiny prints with envy. It wasn't just the perfect ones I adored. I remember one family coming in with a child with a chromosome deletion. I forget what number, but they explained to me that a piece of his DNA was missing, and that's what made him special. Their son was small for his age and had to be physically held to keep him still, but they were authentically happy, and the session turned out to be a lot of fun. I guess they were pleased with my work because suddenly my number was being passed around to online groups and to their friends in the disability world. For a moment in time, I was known as the differently abled photographer. I started finding ways to highlight people's varying abilities as their superpowers rather than hide them. It lasted a year or so until I delivered a premature Nova and had to hit pause on my career. When I went back, I could only work during school hours, so my clients switched from When I went back, I could only work during school hours, so my clients switched over to professional headshots with occasional pet portraits. Now here I was, feeling emotionally debilitated and drawing support from a 6-month-old who felt like he was full of Orbeez. How the mighty had fallen. Ursula returned, but I didn't hand Jaden over right away. Wrapping my arms around his beach ball belly was strangely invigorating. I wanted more, and I knew where I could get it. The next day was Sunday, and per usual, our family went to church. Nova went off to sit with her friends, while Asar and I sat in our third from back row. I looked around at all the familiar faces filling the room. We've been here 8 years, and by this point, I knew many of the people in this room. While there weren't a lot of women that I would say I'm close to, there were 1 or 2 that I would text during the week. But I knew in my heart I couldn't swing a cat in this sanctuary and not hit a woman willing to link arms with me and walk through hard times if I asked her. It was the asking that got me. There was something about sitting in that building that made me feel safe. I knew in my heart I wasn't any safer in church than in my home, but my soul whispered something different. As I allowed myself to become immersed in the service, a peace filled me. Maybe some of it was spiritual, and maybe some of it was just allowing myself to be distracted like Emma talked about, but for that moment, my anxieties felt farther away, like I was inside a fortress. After the service, Nova and Asar were ready to go out for lunch, but I pumped the brakes. "Just go on without me," I said, waving them off. I wanted to see about something. "Pick me up when you're done at Panera and grab me a Fuji apple salad, please." Asar looked like he had more to say, but Nova was sensitive, and he knew she would take it as a personal rejection if he argued. A daddy-daughter date would be good for her. The crowd was thinning out. Most of the people from the first service were leaving, and attendees for the second service were starting to refill the parking spots. A woman I loosely knew named Cheryl was sitting behind a desk at the children's wing. She looked relaxed and comfortable in a red button-down blouse and jeans with red slip-on flats. Her silver white hair was pulled up in a neat bun with a gracious yet confident expression on her face, as if she were more than comfortable handling finger painting and toilet training emergencies. I wanted to be her. Hi, I'm Hannah. I think we've met before when my daughter Nova was little. Anyway, I was wondering if you needed any help in the nursery today," I asked tentatively. Could she tell that on the inside I was paddling hard to keep my head above water? Cheryl's smile widened, and she clasped her hands in front of her and looked up at the ceiling, then back down at me. "God always provides. Here we are, down 2 volunteers in the nursery and desperate for some help. We've had a ton of babies recently. Usually our volunteers get fingerprinted and background checked first, but you're not going to be alone in that room, and we've met before. Just stop by afterwards to fill out an application, and we would love to put you on the schedule if you want. Thank you so much." Cheryl led me down the hall and introduced me to Isaiah and Harriet, an engaged couple who were volunteering twice a month with the babies. Cheryl wasn't kidding. That room was wild. There were walking babies and crawling babies and sleeping babies and swinging babies. My favorites were the crying babies. I could pick them up, pull their warm bodies close in my arms, and sway while they rested against me. One tiny girl fell asleep on my shoulder. I spent a good 30 minutes in the rocking chair, smelling her Johnson & Johnson lavender-scented hair, holding her warm, limp body. She wore a brown corduroy dress with orange leaves on it that became crushed and wrinkled as she slept. Her marshmallow arms hung flaccidly by her sides, pink ribbon mouth agape, catching flies. I traced circles on her tiny shoulder blades with the tips of my fingers while she dozed. It felt magnificent. Both the squishy baby snuggle therapy and a chance to give parents a break from their children. Emma was right. Volunteering turned on a nightlight inside my chest. For the past hour, I didn't feel any of the dark shadows that had been chasing me all year. I wasn't healed. I knew they would come back the minute I walked out that door, but I was absolutely sold on this idea of focusing on something else. Now, how was I going to manage the remaining 6 days of this week? That night, I was scrolling through Facebook and came across a post about adoptions coming out of the Congo. Adopted kids were being denied medical appointments with their longtime pediatricians all of a sudden because their adoptions were being called into question after 10 years in the States. Just like that, I felt an icy dump starting in my head and running its way all through my veins down to my stomach. My gut clenched. How was this possible? I couldn't breathe. I went back to look for more information, and I found a story about a family that went to Africa to adopt a child after a 1.5 years of paperwork, only to find that they were not able to re-enter the U.S. because their newly adopted child was denied admittance. Do they leave him behind? Do they stay in this country forever? What about their jobs? What about their home? What about their dog? My throat closed up and my stomach lurched. This wasn't right. I flipped the blankets off. I rolled out of bed and ran to the toilet. I threw up every scrap of tonight's lasagna. I was never going to sleep again. I grabbed an old marble notebook off the desk by the bathroom and a blue gel pen and started to write. I wrote down every single thing that was scaring me, terrorizing my brain, causing worry in my heart, and weighing me down inside. I had 53 entries. I felt lighter when I finished. I set the book aside and set a timer on my phone for 5 o'clock on Wednesdays. Then I laid back down in my bed, snuggled deep under the green micro-fleece blankets, listening to my husband snore, and I prayed like my life depended on it until I fell asleep. The next morning, the sun came up and all 53 items raced each other to attack my brain. But I fought back. I pushed them out of my thoughts. I forced myself to think about getting Nova up and making breakfast. Just that. Every 11 seconds, another intrusive thought popped up like whack-a-mole, tempting me to think it through and find a solution. But I knew it was a trap. I could never win. I thought about babies. I thought about volunteering. I thought about my grocery list. I thought about Nova. I considered planning the trip to Egypt that my husband wanted to see his family. Anything to get me through the day. I stayed off the internet and I did okay. It felt like I was fake, hiding under a rock during a hurricane, but I wasn't vomiting and I could breathe deeply without shaking, so I kept going. The next day was more of the same, but mildly easier. I was building a habit by not giving in to terrorist thoughts. I felt some of the weight lifting off my shoulders, and a little bit of happy started to seep in. Until I had to go for my annual mammogram, and I was trapped in a waiting room playing world news nonstop. I panicked. I sat and waited to be called, with my eyes towards my lap and my long blonde hair shielding my face like a curtain of safety. I subtly slipped my index fingers into my ears and pressed. I'm sure I look like a crazy woman to the receptionists behind the beige counter, but I was fighting for my life over here. I could not face everything bad in the world. I would not throw up in advanced radiology's bathroom. This was not the place for a panic attack. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, prayed for this moment to end. Hannah, I'll take you back now. Wednesday at 5 p.m. never came. I'd been listening to podcasts all day on my phone as I ran errands, trying to insulate my world. As a result, my phone was dead by 4. I put it on my charger and dashed out the door to pick up Nora from practice. She had asked if we could stop at Target to get, I don't remember what, But by the time we got home with a trunk load of crap and a take and bake pizza, it was 6 o'clock. I had missed my window of worry. The rest of the week was more of the same, and come Sunday morning, you can bet my booty was back in that sanctuary. I had told Asar and Nova about my struggles. It wasn't something I could hide anyway. Asar was all for me doing baby therapy and offered to join me. Nova shot me daggers with her root beer-colored eyes. Nah, you two go have your date. Pick me up when you're done. My fingerprints and background check had cleared during the week. I was scheduled for every single Sunday till Christmas. Emma was proud of my progress. I still hadn't gone a whole day without feeling fearful in more than a year, but now it was just a whiff of dog poop here and there rather than wearing a straitjacket during all my waking hours. Emma said it was a cyclical process, not linear. The more time I spent in the nursery, the more I got to know a few parents and the other volunteers. Turns out Olympia was struggling as hard as I was. She used to treat her anxiety with OxyContin. She'd lost her job and her savings. But she'd been clean now for 11 years and had learned other coping tools for her toolbox. I don't know why, but I felt better to be in the trenches with a veteran. Like if someone else came through on the other side, maybe I could too. My anxiety isn't gone, but I now have an action plan to keep the wolves at bay. When I wake up in the middle of the night or can't sleep, I pray. I volunteered last weekend to watch the littles in the nursery for all of Saturday. Church was hosting a women's retreat called Journaling with Jesus. The entire day was sticky, stinky, and exhausting. But seeing those mothers collecting their kids with relaxed and glowing faces filled my cup. I did that. I enabled other women to put new tools in her toolbox. Maybe I'll always have anxiety. Maybe I'll win and the demons will leave. But I'm not drowning anymore. I have a plan. I have my God. I have tools in my toolbox and women to link arms with. I am not responsible for the hurt all over the world. And if I choose to feel it all, I can't help anyone. I'm not selfish. I'm just intentional. I'm also making strides to increase my photography hours and go back to shooting baby and family portraits. Rather than worrying about the hurtful stuff, let's focus on immortalizing the good stuff. The end.
Don't worry about that now. The lies are only what you think you need. What you need will be supplied. Don't worry about tomorrow. Don't worry about today. Don't worry about tomorrow. Don't worry about today.